There are some who believe that the modern world continues to evolve morally. While this might be true about the general public, unfortunately, it seems not to be true when it pertains to those in power. One of the most bitterly debated subjects in classical archaeology is whether or not the Carthaginians, an ancient civilization in North Africa, killed their children for their gods. Evidence for the worship of Moloch is found in the Old Testament, with variant names Molech, Malek, and Baal, meaning Lord, and also the Phoenician theonym for Moloch is MLK. If the classical reports are accurate, Moloch represents a deity or symbology associated with child sacrifice and is fervently despised in the Old Testament. Other than claims from Alex Jones during his escapades with Bohemian Grove, no archaeological or historical evidence states Moloch or any of his variant names resemble an owl. Rabbinical tradition depicted Moloch as a bronze statue with the head of a bull and a large human body where victims were thrown into fire. The Canaanite deity has also been drawn and referred to as Kronos due to the parallel theme of the Titan god devouring his children. The ritualistic intimations of Baal and Moloch have existed for thousands of years, with modern reimaginings depicting the idol as a machine. Other controversial interpretations can be found in the origins of Freemasonry, as revealed in the Royal Arch Degree in the Rituals of Exaltation. The name of the great architect of the universe is a trinity of words: Ja-Bulan, translating to Yahweh, Baal, and Osiris, the ancient Egyptian god of fertility, resurrection, and the underworld. In Tunisia, just outside Jerusalem, children were said to have been sacrificed to Baal by being, quote, passed through fire in an area called a Tophet. According to Rashi, the single most influential commentator of the Middle Ages, the massive statue of, quote, Molech, which was of copper, and they would heat it up from underneath with its hands spread out, and they would place the child on his hands, and he would be burnt and mown, and the priests would beat drums so the father should not hear his son's voice and take pity, end quote. It's pertinent to understand the Hebrew Bible referred to Moloch worship as Canaanite idolatry, straying away from Judaism. The quotes from Leviticus are clear. But the religion of Carthage in North Africa managed to continue the Canaanite ritual. With several modifications, they birthed what the Jewish virtual library called the cult of Moloch.
Another subtle yet devastating aspect of the global conspiracy is their manipulation of calendars, clocks, and our perception of time. We are being enslaved by man-made mechanisms and systems for keeping time. Not only are we wage slaves to bankers, governments, bosses, and landowners, but we are also time slaves to our watches, clocks, and calendars. We slave to 9-to-5 school and work days. We slave to 5-day school and work weeks. We are spiritual slaves to Greenwich Mean Time, the Gregorian calendar, and an unnatural 7-day week. Buried inside, from Chronoclast wrote, "Time is the primary socializing tool, and the clock is the key machine of industrial capitalism. The imperialism of space and material is everywhere evident, but the imperialism of time is a shadowy beast. What is of direct concern is how time is perceived, controlled, exploited, manipulated, institutionalized, and internalized. If we do not understand time, we become its victims. One thing remains apparent. Time politics are power politics. Every sundial, watermill, calendar, week cycle, social policy, and temporal monument has served a particular interest and ideology. The hallmark of these, of course, has always been technological power and chauvinist control. In the service of precision, the atomic second is now defined as the duration of 9,192,631,770 particle oscillations within a cesium-133 atom. If you follow the sun and moon to keep track of time instead of clocks and watches, many things change. If stores open at sunup and close at sundown, Managers cannot anally enforce punching time cards. If you tell your friends to meet you at the river when the sun touches the tree line, you naturally, patiently wait for them while watching a beautiful sunset. If you tell your friends to meet you at the mall at 7:30 p.m., then you must constantly look at your wrist or the wall, watching a series of cumulatively frustrating numbers. Samuel Macy wrote that people can be characterized as wound up, run down, rusty, or going like clockwork is essentially a product of 17th century thought. It implies not only that their work may be accurately measured, but also that their motions can be studied. Given proper incentives, they will follow predetermined and appropriately mechanical patterns. When indoctrinated into meaningless calendars, like the Gregorian and Julian, wristwatches, 9-to-5 workdays, and 5-day work weeks, people most certainly do follow predetermined, mathematically calculable patterns and tendencies. We like to have a drink after work. We like to watch a movie at the weekend. We like coffee in the mornings. We buy flowers on Valentine's Day, and so on.
Civilization which seems to have been forgotten or erased. Tartaria was apparently once where a very spiritual and technologically advanced civilization existed. It was well known as the Golden Empire and covered most of the northern Asian continent. Originally a location had been ruled by the Tatarski Velakani mighty giants, who were essentially from the Aryans. Tartaria was a huge landmass and would have still been the largest today if the mud floods had not destroyed everything. During October 1586, the civilization of Tartaria, which means strong place, was established. But over many centuries, the unity of that civilization then fragmented. After December 1922, Tartaria was then made into separate republics. On the 18th of April 1627, the famous Dutch cartographer known as William Blair completed his map of Tartaria, which clearly showed how massive the expanse of the Tartarian civilization was. The map showed Tartaria reached the borders of China and Mongolia. This incredibly advanced culture used free energy systems, grandiose architecture that still exists to this day, using the electromagnetic frequencies of planet Earth to abundantly live in Tartaria. Unbelievably, President Vladimir Putin in 2013 made Tartaria maps public, and in 2017 he also gave a map created by William Blair of Tartaria to the former president of Tatarstan, also known as Tartaria. So how did William Blair have such a clear picture of this country if it didn't exist? We learn about the famous Egypt, the Persian Empire, the Ottoman or Roman empires, but all of this history is small in comparison to the Tartarian Empire, unless it isn't true and it's just a myth or a story. But you can find too many documents that state this region certainly did exist. The landmass and territory called Tartary and Great Tartary was an historical location in northern Asia that existed between the Caspian Sea, the Ural Mountains and the Pacific Ocean. Tartary was a blanket term used by Europeans for the areas of central, northern and eastern Asia, as these parts were largely unknown to European explorers. This is why the entire geographic territory was known simply as Tartary, and its inhabitants were called Tartars. In 1998, the CIA declassified a document which they had produced in 1957. A section within the document mentions the existence of the Tartarian civilization. In other words, Tartar history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank, was to be falsified in order to eliminate references to the great Russian aggressions and to hide facts of the real center of Tartar-Russian relations. A book that covers Tartaria very well is the James William Lee book called The One World Tartarians, the greatest civilization ever to be erased from history. and in the book he explains how the historical presence of Tartaria was deliberately censored and deleted. The word Tartaria is linguistically connected with the Greek word Tartaros, which means frightful place. That location then became more commonly known as Tartarus. In the stories of Greek mythology, the anciently founded Cyclopean giants were put into Tartarus, the frightful place. Hence, the Cyclopean giants of Greek mythology represented the Tartarian giants, whose golden empire was submerged in the silt and soil. The historical trauma which arose from the devastation of the Tartarian civilization was remembered in these archetypal stories. The Tatarski Velikani, the mighty giants, are thought to have been breatharians, which means they did not have to rely on the use of digestion and therefore did not need to consume food and water for calories. But instead, the mighty giants received energy straight from the ether, the Earth's grid, the geomagnetic frequencies that resonate around the planet Earth. This meant the mighty giants of Tartaria had obtained a true mastery as breatharians of the ether, which is comprised of electrostatic vibrations in the atmosphere. Since the mighty giants were breatharians, it is possible they had digestive systems that were different to those of human beings. The highly efficient Tartarian civilization was the largest controlled geographic expanse and would still have been the largest to this day. The extensive golden empire of Tartaria flourished due to their leader believing in advanced occult technology, free energy and grandiose architecture. Apparently, the communities of Tartarian giants had free energy systems installed within their churches, temples, and every kind of building. Hence, every property functioned as some kind of etheric generator station that produced electricity from the geomagnetic frequencies which resonate around the Earth. Maybe a connection to the work of Nikola Tesla, and where he was able to source his genius experiments. Other buildings which the mighty giants built were used as water stations and sound-resonating acoustic healing centers. They worked with the telluric electrical currents of planet Earth. By using ingenious engineering, intricate architectural features, and occult technology, the immensely productive mighty giants transformed the electrostatic soil into a natural circuit of the ground, which consistently resonated around planet Earth. The Tartarians had advanced methods of capturing and storing natural energy, creating energy systems that could power, heat, ventilate their own buildings. Their fireplaces did not burn any combustible substances like they do today. The fireplaces were used as electrical heating and cooling sources to create energy for the home, by connecting to the telluric currents of the Earth and therefore functioning as etheric electrical vacuums. So where has this information gone? Further evidence points to the fact that the Tartarian civilization was eradicated by a number of mudfloods which occurred between 1740 and 1894. Such upheavals became known as the Great Reset. The first mudflood occurred after the Great Frost, which was dated for the 8th of January 1740 and ended on the 6th of October 1741, and had been caused by a massive eruption by the Shivaluk volcano in eastern Russia. Vast atmospheric disturbances happened and possibly led to the second mudflood that happened in 1834. Which then brought about the Great Reset on the 12th of February 1835. Further volcanic eruptions occurred, and these upheavals also caused atmospheric changes. These events could have contributed to the third mudflood happening in 1892. The third mudflood largely destroyed the remnants of Great Tartaria, and then by 1894 everything had geographically changed on planet Earth. There are thousands of buildings on Earth that relate to Tartarian architecture that are over 250 years old, encased in silt, gravel and soil from the mudfloods, and therefore give indication that such events did actually occur. Much of the silt, gravel and soil covers many stories of these buildings, and in some cases even completely engulfs them. This was most definitely an older kind of Great Reset and was exploited as a way to eradicate advanced scientific knowledge which humans could have used. We have to remember that knowledge is power. Over the past 5,000 years there have been several Great Resets of civilizations. From the time of the Third Babel, the Confusion Tower, also known as the Tower of Babel in the Bible, it is also mentioned in Irish folklore about the various mudfloods. But the mudfloods did certainly cause most of the last Great Reset and therefore explain much of what can be observed in many countries. When we look at North America and elsewhere on Earth, it suggests that there were advanced civilizations from around 1627 to 1835, and in many cases even earlier than that. We are told that American Indians resided in teepees or wickiups, but this is a very distorted version of history, when actually only a minority of Native Americans existed like that. The American Indians developed highly advanced spiritual cultures, but much of that true history has also been destroyed. So did Tartaria exist? The idea that a golden empire historically existed in Northern Asia sounds like a Hollywood sci-fi movie or a fantasy adventure novel. But there is no doubt, because of the evidence that has been discovered, that the Tartarian civilization did exist. So why is this information not taught in schools, colleges and universities? Why is so much information about Tartaria deliberately kept from the public? Keep people from their history and they are easily controlled. For the control system to exist, the history of planet Earth has to be controlled, because anything outside of the narrative which they want you to believe has to be censored, erased or deleted. But they can never erase or conceal the truth, as evidence will always arise eventually. It is for us to put the pieces of this incredible puzzle together and learn from this spiritual experience as human beings, and not be caught up in someone else's version of reality. As we need to remember what the true history actually is, so we can progress and evolve productively as a society.
This appears to be a message to expose the banking cartel in America, and to let the people know that they have the power to liquidate them, and get back to Kansas, the real land and republic. The Wizard of Oz, written by L. Frank Baum, is not just a mere story. What is Oz a symbol for? Ounces. What is measured in ounces? Gold. What is the yellow brick road? Bricks or ingot bars of gold. The character known as the Straw Man represents that fictitious, all caps, legal fiction, a person the federal US government created with the same spelling as your birth name. Remember what the Straw Man wanted from the Wizard of Oz. A brain? No juristic person, legal fiction, paper corporation has a brain because he or she has no breath of life. What did the straw man get in place of a brain? A certificate, a birth certificate for a new legal creation. He was proud of his new legal status, and all the other legalisms he was granted. Now he becomes the epitome of the brainless sack of straw who was given a certificate in place of a grain of common sense. Now, what about the Tin Man? Does taxpayer identification number, TIN, bring anything to mind? The poor Tin Man just stood there, mindlessly doing his work until his body literally seized up and stopped functioning. He worked himself to death because he had no heart or soul.
He's the heartless and emotionless creature, robotically carrying out his daily task as though he were already dead. He's the ox pulling the plow and the mule toiling under the yoke. These days, his taskmasters just oil him nightly with beer and place him in front of a hypnotic television until his very existence no longer has any meaning or value. His masters keep him cold on the outside and heartless on the inside in order to control any emotion or feeling that might arise. The cowardly lion was always too frightened to stand up for himself. Of course, he was a bully and a big mouth when it came to picking on those smaller than him. Have you ever noticed how bullies are really the biggest cowards? They act as though they have great courage, but, in reality, have none at all. They roar, but with no teeth of authority to back them up. When push came to shove, the cowardly lion always buckled and whimpered when anyone of any size or stature challenged him. He wanted courage from the Grand Wizard, so he was awarded a medal of official recognition. Now, although remaining a coward, his official status allowed him to be a bully, but with officially recognized authority, and not at all unlike the attorneys who hide behind the courts. What about the trip through the field of poppies? Did you notice how this had no narcotic effect on the straw man who had no brain, or the tin man with no heart or soul? They weren't real people, so drugs could not influence them. The Wizard of Oz was written at the turn of the century, so how could the author have known America was going to be drugged? The Crown has been playing the drug cartel game for centuries. Just look up the history of Hong Kong and the Opium Wars. The Crown already had valuable experience conquering all of China with drugs, so why not the rest of the world? What was the Emerald City? The Federal Reserve System. Will finally expose Wizard for what he really was. Toto, the cute and somewhat annoying little dog. Toto means in total, or all together in Latin. What was it that the witch wanted after she alleged that the little dog had bitten her? Toto, or everything. Notice how Toto was not scared of the great wizard's theatrics, yet he was so small in size compared to the wizard that no one seemed to notice him. The smoke, flames and holographic images of Oz were designed to frighten people into doing as the great wizard commanded. But Toto simply padded over, started barking until others paid attention to him and came to see what the barking was about. Who's behind the curtain? Just an ordinary person controlling the levers that created the illusion of the great wizard's power and authority. When Toto pulled back the curtain and completely exposed him, the charade was at an end. The veil hiding the corporate legal fiction and its false courts was removed. The wizard's game was up, and what was he after all? The con man, a fraud. We can see, in this tale, just how loud the bark from a little dog can be. Most of us remain silent and wait to be given whatever food and recognition, if any, by our legal masters. Let us not forget those flying monkeys. What perfect mythical creatures to represent the Bar Association attorneys, who attack and control the little people for the great Crown Wizard, the powerful and grand bankers of Oz. How, finally, was the evil witch destroyed? Pure, clean water? Liquidation? How did Dorothy finally get home? She simply clicked her heels. She always had the power, and so do we. What would it take to expose the wizard for what he is? We each need only a brain, a heart and soul, and courage. Then, and perhaps of the greatest importance, we need to learn how to work together. Only by working together can we have the freedom that was given to us all under the law of God.
the sort of Kundalini activation they do is not good. The caduceus was originally the symbol of Kundalini. The snakes around a pole is the serpent ascending the spine. And when you see 3, it means that the chakra has opened. I've heard that Kundalini can spontaneously happen, or it occurs through meditation. I don't know because I haven't tried it, but if you can do this on your own, why do you need to involve children? In alchemy, the blending of male and female is called the Philosopher's Stone. That's why Teal Swan and his cult stamped it on their arms. The various cults practice ritual sodomy, and they want you doing it as well. They want souls trapped in the Adam Cadman so they can create more realms with that energy. There's no such thing as transgender. It has nothing to do with gender and everything to do with corrupting the soul. Freemasons believe sodomy opens the third eye to Luciferian illumination. It attacks a pressure point of the nerves at the base of the spine, causing temporary neurological paralysis and a shift of consciousness. Read this and consider that in public schools and mass media, children are being indoctrinated to regard homosexuality as normal. There are thousands of gay-straight alliance clubs in schools throughout the West where youths have an opportunity to meet and experiment with homosexuality. The best-kept secret of the esoteric grades of Freemasonry is ritual sodomy. MK Ultra survivors have testified that sodomy causes identity splits in children up to age 5, so it was standard for programming multiples. In order to produce a mind control slave, it must be done ideally between age 2 and 4. The pressure point causes memory blackout, which is why victims don't experience flashbacks before a physiological change in the brain occurs between age 28 and 32. Anyone that has experienced sodomy has been illuminated or initiated into the Luciferian initiation because Lucifer is real. No one will enter the New World Order unless he or she will make a pledge to worship Lucifer. No one will enter the New Age unless he will take a Luciferian initiation. This is why sodomy laws have been overturned almost worldwide since 1970. Freemasonry and the butthole chakra. At a degree above the 3rd degree Master Mason, there is a ritual involving the initiate giving another member a kiss on the base of the spine. This Freemasonic ritual borrows from Eastern concepts of Kundalini and chakras with its own sexual adaptations. Candidates entering this degree have to kiss their initiator on the mouth, the navel, the penis, and at the base of the spine. These kisses were regarded by critics of the order as proof of their perverted sexual activities. But in the occult tradition, the navel, sexual organs, and the perineum are the physical locations of the psychic centers of the human body, known in the East as chakras. 666 is the magical square of the sun. 111. Don't puzzle with it. It opens gates. It connects with the star of Remphan. 666 is the number of the flesh. It is the number of the sun. Sun worship. Samuel is Lilith, chopped in half. Go to the obelisk and pray for Lucifer to strike. They believe obelisks direct heavenly energy. Sounds exactly like what the Vril believed. You have to understand why they wanted them closeted. It was out of necessity. Homosexuality and sodomy in the US was always taboo and considered perverse until just about 10 years ago. But yes, Freemasonry is behind the gay agenda push. Freemasonry founded Hollywood. Nearly every judge, attorney, politician is a Freemason. And the purpose of the agenda is to alleviate their guilt by making society accept the decision to engage in sex magic sodomite-based rituals to receive the positions of power. But the Freemasons that run things are old goats who are still afraid of coming out. They say it makes it so they can live nearly forever, and that they will steal all the money, kill the entire planet, enslave a few, and then use robotics to literally upload their memories and personalities and live forever. Trying to reach God on the other side of Pluto. Interesting, since we're now hearing of planets on the other side of Pluto. Another interesting note, when I was a teen in the early 80s, video game rooms were built beside both lodges in town. In every town in which you find a Masonic temple or lodge, it's standard for them to recruit members among your local police force. They also recruit judges. Freemasons believe in the doctrine of mutual assistance, in which they swear an oath to defend and advance the cause of another Mason in trouble, no matter how wrong or horrendous that cause is. But that just sounds too close for comfort. What is the significance of the goat? Why do they have it in some of their stickers? What is the goat for them? Well, the goat is Saturn. The symbolic animal of Saturn is the goat, since Saturn is located in the constellation Capricorn. Here is another Saturn-Satan link to the Baphomet as a goat. Capricorn is the sea goat. It's ruled by Saturn. Pan is a faun who likes children. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Mr. Tumnus the Faun takes a child to his house. In Pan's Labyrinth, he preys on this traumatized child. That's pansexual. Pan, also known as Cernunnos, connects to CERN and portals. Cronus, or Saturn, devoured all his children so they could not usurp his power and reign. Saturn is worshipped around the world by these fools. The rings of Saturn are created by machines. Saturn is the cube that perpetuates this false reality of fear, this matrix that we live in. The material world, these plastic graphics, is an illusion, a veil set upon us by the planet Saturn, or the black cube generator machine.